What's the wildest conspiracy theory you fully believe? Story 1. Information is leaked from a studio about an upcoming project that pisses off the fan base. The studio will then change things to keep the fans happy. The conspiracy is that the original leak was just a lie to drum up free publicity for the project. This made me think of the Sonic movie. No way in hell were they going to make Sonic look that bad. Put out a fake trailer with him looking all scary. Everyone is talking about it. Voila. Take a bit to say you're fixing his look. Put out a new trailer. You just drummed up tons of publicity since people are now following the story. Story 2, 100% of the population believes that Putin has had people killed for political reasons, but only a very small percentage of Americans believe that American politicians would ever do so. I mean, there's a reason the joke or saying is the highest award a journalist can receive is being assassinated by the CIA. There's probably been a handful who may found out one too many things on the elites and then had an accident before they could publish their findings. Story 3. I think it is entirely plausible that the thylacine still exists in the depths of the Australian mainland, and the government knows it. It wouldn't be that crazy for misguided scientists to have moved or released a few in the late 1800s. Once the animal went extinct, they certainly couldn't reveal the existence of the mainland population, lest poachers and local farmers destroy it. They also may have realized how significant the liability was for releasing large predators into farmland. Folks have found hair and scat samples that may be from the animal, but the university lab results always come back and say they are nonsense. That's probably the truth, but I wouldn't be entirely surprised if the government was strong-arming them into reporting bullcrap results. To be honest, if I was a conservation scientist, it wouldn't take much convincing for me to fake a negative test. Story 4. The Australian cyclist Mick Rogers is a time traveler. In the 2002 Tour Down Under, Rogers was in a great position in the breakaway and looking to move into the overall race lead, but a collision with a motorcycle left his bike out of commission. With the team service car and mechanics way down the road, it looked like Rogers' chances were gone. Then a cycling fan, who just happened to be at that precise point in the road, offered Rogers his bicycle to continue on. The bike also just happened to be the exact asterisk model of Colnago that Rogers had been riding. It was the correct size, right down to things like the stem and crank lengths. It even had the same pedal system that Rogers was already using, so he could just clip in and be away. He finished that stage and took the race lead, which he held on to all the way to the end for his only career win in his home tour. My theory is that in the original timeline, Rogers didn't win the 2002 Tour Down Under. He quit cycling in anger and devoted his life to theoretical physics and solving the problem of time travel just so he could arrange it to leave himself a spare bike where and when he needed it. Story 5. I very well believe some celebrities, in an attempt to live a normal life, might fake their death in order to escape the pressures of their celebrity. Many normal people or wanted criminals have done it with great success. So what is stopping some of the younger, more instantly famous from dying young in order to live a normal life? Granted, some do die very young, but at the same time, I very well think someone like Michael Jackson could have easily escaped from all the craziness and decided to live somewhere quietly. Story 6. The CIA created conspiracy theories to provide cover for the real conspiracies. It's actually kind of scary how smug anti-conspiracy discourse is used to derail actual conversations. A moment that chipped my faith in humanity just a little was when I was arguing with some people about Guatemala in 1954, and people denied my version of events happened because it's a conspiracy. Like, no, the parties involved admitted to it. If you don't know what I'm talking about and are from the USA, you should have a Google. But basically, the USA destroyed a democracy because it made a corporation sad. Story 7. That the makeup and skincare industries are in collusion to create a continuous circle of business for each other. The theory? Makeup brands produce products to cover up facial imperfections, which themselves irritate the skin and cause breakouts, whilst the skincare industry benefits from people buying so many skincare products due to breakouts that are made more frequent from makeup use. The skincare products are intentionally inefficient, not only to keep people purchasing from the hope that they will one day produce results through long-term, consistent use, something which they say is required to see the effect on your skin, but to also continue to boost makeup sales used to cover up breakouts. And the cycle continues. Story 8. The Hawaii ballistic missile warning was not an accident. Something was launched by someone, and classified military technology took it out. What this source told me was that, and again I've never found this source to be wrong, was that there was actually a missile fired. The missile was brought down by the United States anti-missile program. It was a submarine-based missile, and it was from a Chinese sub. This was a renegade faction within the Chinese military that was in charge of this sub that fired this missile. And in fact, the Chinese Navy, supporting Xi Jinping, current president of China, was the ship that then took out that submarine. Story 9. Not sure how wild this is, but Lee Harvey Oswald didn't act alone. Craziest thing to me is Jack Ruby, who was at the original press conference at Parkland Hospital, just waltzing right into that parking garage that every television set on the planet is tuned to, not being stopped by any kind of security, going right up to Oswald and shooting him point blank, and none of the cops there shooting him back. To be fair, he was killing the guy who had just shot a popular president. It's possible the cops just thought it was no big loss. Also, the weapon was easily wrestled out of Ruby's hands, and nobody took their guns out to fire because there were 100 people around who could have gotten hurt. Ruby's motives and connections could easily be questioned, but the Dallas police and all of the people present during Oswald's shooting had no idea what was happening. Story 10. The rise of social media is inadvertently yet directly responsible for the wild political landscape we've had lately. Social media platforms like Facebook generate ad revenue through advertising, and they use targeted advertising to determine which ads to show their users. Users are also shown content that tends to agree with their interests and viewpoints, which is why the recommended section on YouTube is so vastly different from user to user. Here's where we start getting into conspiracy. The desire of social media platforms to generate ad revenue, with the help of their AI algorithms, sorts people into like-minded echo chambers, in which their more radical personal beliefs are validated and amplified. These people lack any ability to defend their beliefs, and, in fact, have been so saturated in them that they've lost the ability to see the world as a place where their beliefs could be false to begin with. Entitled Karens begin to lash out in public after years of seeing positive reinforcement on their computer screens. The net result includes flat earthers and anti-vaxxers, but other social tags have their own echo chambers as well. Some are just obviously less benign than others. I think this transparent segregation of our minds will be detrimental to society as a whole. I think it is crucial that we collectively minimize the role of social media in our lives. After all, it seems obvious to me that the goal of these companies is not to enrich our individual or collective lives, but to produce value for the shareholders at any cost, including the cost of the mental health of the user base. Story 11. That hedge funds and market makers have colluded for decades to bankrupt companies through naked short selling in an effort to further consolidate wealth into the hands of the 1%. Share price doesn't really affect the underlying business unless they are looking to raise funds. Even then, they have options. If you're looking for the mechanisms that are responsible for wealth consolidation, it's compound interest, the immense costs of being poor, and the failure of taxation systems. Story 12. There was an ancient civilization on this world that predates anything archaeology uncovers, and they were wiped out so hard no trace was left yet to be found. Not Atlantis, but similar. I find it absolutely fascinating as crap that there was a period of warmth between the last glacial maximum and the younger Dryas period. If there was any hint of civilization there, it would have been totally obliterated by the glaciers and time. I doubt they were technically advanced by our standards, but imagine if there were civilizations on par with our Bronze Age that just completely disappeared. We may never know. Story 13. That there is a mass gaslighting campaign against anyone who questions the official narrative of any event or decision, where they are purposely trying to make it seem like any questioning or skepticism of government intentions and agendas basically makes you a tinfoil hat-wearing nutjob who thinks that the earth is flat and ruled by lizard people. And I also believe that the combination of that gaslighting, along with the hive mind or echo chamber thing you see on sites like this, and even in actual social circles, is a byproduct of what you're describing that's leaked its way into our normal lives, telling people how they need to think, what to believe in, how to dress, and how to treat those who are not affected by the influencing, advertising, the trends, etc., and continue to stick to their guns being themselves. I've been noticing his crap since around 2004, and when MySpace first took off. It was so ridiculous how people began basing their judgments of others on how well their MySpace account was pimped out, and not by how they presented themselves with a sense of confidence and dignity while in person. Those who lived their lives according to what they believed to be right and them were quickly written off, and it's still going on today. Story 14. UA Flight 93 was shot down by the Air Force on September 11, 2001. 3 planes had already hit targets at that point, and the government couldn't risk what carnage this flight would cause if it weren't disabled. The Air Force waited until the plane was over empty terrain and shot it down. Former AF intelligence officer here. Fighters weren't preloaded with munitions in those days. Under the best of circumstances, it would take about 15 minutes to load an F-16 with sidewinders and get the bird in the air. By then, wherever the airliner was when the alert went out, it'd be approximately, say, 100 to 115 miles closer to its target, and even closer once the aircraft were within range to fire, just a few miles for the AIM-9. There just wasn't enough time from the scramble order to load up, intercept, and bring down Flight 93 before it reached DC. The plan that they actually went with was to ram 2 unarmed, but piloted F-16S into the airliner in a last-ditch kamikaze strike. But before the insanely courageous pilots reached Flight 93, it had already crashed. Story 15. Humanity had, in ancient times, contact with superior beings, technologically. And that is why most gods are so similar, even when created continents apart and in different ages. It's the same story. And the Vatican knows this. Many people in power know it. I don't mean Rihanna or Trump, I mean mostly religious power. Basically, there are no gods and no religion. It is our ancestors' interpretation of advanced technology used as a manipulation tool. Story 16. It's pretty general, but there are many companies, governments, and other groups of people who promote the benefits or increase the popularity of things that are bad for people just because it gets them money. Examples include clothing brands pandering to body positivity so they can sell more clothes, fad diets that are bad for you being promoted to sell special foods, negative drug side effects being ignored to get you addicted or sell you drugs to fix the problem, etc. I also think that companies and governments sometimes create false controversies and outrages amongst different groups of people to keep us divided amongst ourselves. We can't notice how bad they're doing if we're too worried about who's dating who, what color someone is, whether or not someone has something between her legs, or where someone was born. A good example of this is noticeable during elections, when candidates deflect real questions with nonsense about a hot-button issue. Story 17. We are the ancient aliens. There was an ancient human civilization much further in the past than we currently believe. They saw a cataclysmic event occurring and sent what humans they could into orbit to either live for hundreds or thousands of years or sleep in cryogenic pods. The flood all ancient civilizations talk about wiped out any remains of them. They then descended in pods thousands of years later around the world to teach the surviving humans basic skills necessary to advance, which is why you see civilizations building pyramids and advancing rapidly around the world roughly 4,000 to 6,000 years ago. Story 18. Those dreams are your soul going to a different plane of reality. So hear me out. At a camp one time, me and my friend were talking about dreams, and eventually started talking about how me and my friend had a conversation in a dream, and we both saw each other in the exact place and time, in this alternate infinite plane of reality, where it can be whatever you want it to be. We decided that when you sleep and dream, your soul ropes away from your body, does whatever it wants, and you usually have no control. But the small rope allowing your soul to come back at a moment's notice is what allows you to wake up or see what's going on. As well as this, when you die, your soul cuts this rope and heads to this plane of reality, and sometimes finds their way back to our reality. One last thing we came up with was that to have a dream and enter this reality, your mind and body must have committed some X amount of requirement that only God knows about. Then we have a dream, and that's how dreams work, I guess. I know it's probably stupid, but that was our idea. Story 19. Michael Jordan quit basketball to play baseball was just a way to protect his image, and the NBA instead of him having to serve a suspension for gambling on games. His late father's love of baseball made for an okay story, but him playing for a White Sox farm team helps protect his love in Chicago. Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, even current NFL guys, MLB rights are based on drafts and contract rights, not conveniently playing for the team in the region they were most beloved. Story 20. Pretty sure that most modern cultures worldwide, first world, third world, atheist, monotheistic, polytheistic, completely unsuperstitious, are really death-worshipping cultists. Most people are involved unknowingly, but some are guiding it deliberately, eroding people's beliefs in the innate worth of life, and encouraging people to value others based on practical metrics rather than giving them value simply for being a living, sentient person. These beliefs would be in addition to beliefs currently held, if any. I think we've gone in and out of being death cultists throughout human history, but it's ticked up recently thanks to relatively recent global conflicts and socioeconomic divides being more visible. Story 21. Moose aren't real. They were hunted to extinction in the 1800s, but Canada became experts in animatronics and dudes in moose costumes to create a Northern Hemisphere spy network and to create a drive for tourism to an otherwise uninhabitable country. I may or may not have also created this conspiracy in 1998. I am a moose hunter. I shot a moose last year, and when it went down, I began to remove the gut. After I cut the animal open, I was shocked to see nothing inside. This is uncommon for living things. Stuff that's alive has organs and tubes and crap. I got a saw and opened the breastbone and found a small black rectangular box with a couple wires going to the face area. I pulled the box and found the serial number. Within minutes, I was surrounded by helicopters and ground troops. I was ordered to maintain my silence, but after seeing your post, it gave me the courage to speak my truth. I'm done running. Story 22. Flight 93 didn't crash in that field. This one is interesting because I don't think anyone would blame the government for doing that. Crap, if there is no way to take back the plane and they're going to hit DC, obviously the AF will shoot it down. That said, there is no good evidence for this, and it cheapens the sacrifice of the people who fought so hard to stop the terrorists. We have audio recording of Todd Beamer, the guy who made the call to the FBI, rallying the other passengers and concluding with his famous "let's roll" before they all charged the terrorist. The flight attendant even had the wherewithal to boil water in the kitchen to pour on the face of the terrorist. I hope she got the chance. Of all the crap W did, I wouldn't blame him at all if he ordered the shoot down. But I think those passengers went down fighting. Story 23. The Great Pyramid of Egypt was built much further back in time by a more advanced civilization. Hieroglyphics was their written language. I find it particularly fascinating that one of the first written languages recorded is also the most advanced. I thought language is something that evolves over time, but it seems that language has actually developed over time since hieroglyphics was invented or used. We are still learning things about the Great Pyramid. I think it was in 2020 when they finally got a little robot past the stone blocking one of the air shafts from the king's chamber, and they found more ancient symbols or drawings carved on the floor of the shaft, until they came to another stone, blocking the shaft, which they could not get around. Story 24. I believe that the panhandlers you see on street corners and intersections are actually employees of a nationwide cartel of panhandlers. Notice how they all seem to end their clearly written signs with "Thank you and God bless." The theory goes that there is a top tier of leaders who control sign creation, location assignments, transportation to the assigned location, keeping non-cartel members from established locations, making sure everyone gets paid whether or not they have a good day, etc. A portion of every dollar the people make gets kicked up the chain. These upper-tier folks keep them from getting robbed by other non-cartel members, keep the cops off their backs, and make sure the best spots are available. There's no fighting for a good intersection. They know they're going to get a decent amount of cash, and they have a ride. Story 25. No politician actually wants to take away guns. Here's why. They all know it would be near impossible to enforce, because law enforcement and the military would either not agree to enforce it because they disagree about taking away firearms, or because they know it would be a fight for every freaking hillbilly gun owner. Because, this is the actual conspiracy theory, What happens when a politician says they're trying to take away guns? Everyone goes out and buys more guns and ammo, thus leading me to believe that these politicians are just being paid to say those things by the uber-rich firearm companies via lobbying. If X company pays a politician $1 million to say that, but then they make another $5 million because of the jump in buying, then they actually made out with some good revenue. So these companies just pay these politicians to say this so they can sell more. The politicians also get paid and get the backing of those who actually want to take away guns. So it's a win-win situation. I know this is extremely wacky sounding, but it makes sense in my mind at least. Story 26. Anything covered in major news media is a fear tactic, distraction, or chill pill, and they run in cycles to create false surges in these areas, and the generations of my parents and grandparents weren't free-thinking enough or didn't notice as this transition happened and have been living their lives with false feeling and no understanding of how the world around them really is in order to get them to act/vote/think a certain way, and falsely trust the peanut butter and crap sandwich that is news media coverage. Story 27. Companies deliberately make people miserable and with low self-esteem with their ads, products, policies, etc. Because dissatisfaction drives consumption as a way to fill the void in your life and/or make up for your perceived inadequacies. In other words, everyone feeling like crap isn't a failure of capitalism. It's a success because it's precisely the goal. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy, as in they conspire or plan together, but truth. It was part of my marketing class last week. Women's magazines are the most blatant examples, with their articles that are worded to sound helpful to improve you, but are designed to make you feel less than, so that you buy the connected products advertised in the magazine. Capitalism requires dissatisfaction to flourish. 100% true and taught in business school. Story 28. We have never seen an accurate map and we do not know what year it truly is. This isn't a conspiracy theory, but a fact. We have changed our calendar multiple times throughout human history, and the starting point, year zero, was started arbitrarily when humans had already existed for thousands of years. The common map of the globe translated into a 2D flat map is also distorted due to the nature of flattening out a sphere. Additionally, the arrangement of the north and southern hemispheres and the orientation of our maps are psychologically influential in terms of how you view the status of the world. You have North America on top of South America. Subconsciously leading one to rank things from top to bottom makes the mind think, however subtle, that the higher countries on the map are better than the lower countries. I do believe that the orientation of our maps was done by the powers that be for these purposes. Story 29. Hollow Earth. Caveat: not the inverted Earth in a bubble with a sun inside version. A while back in Romania, I think it was, geologists accessed a cave that had been completely sealed away from the outside world for presumably thousands of years. However, inside this cave was a fully self-contained, self-sustaining ecosystem that held organisms significantly diverged from any of their closest relatives. I figure if such a thing can happen in a random little cave, who's to say there might not be much larger pockets deep within the Earth's crust with their own self-contained ecosystems, adapted to the heat and pressure, that might never see the light of day, both figuratively and literally. They could be down there just vibing and we'd never know.